We were talking about this a little bit yesterday, kind of just you and I, kind of predicting who we thought might end up on the Diamondbacks Fall League roster. But this morning, we got an answer, and you wrote about it over at Go PHNX. Speaking of some of the great content we have over there, what do you think of what we got so far?
Yeah, so the D-backs have 8 representatives. I'll just start by listing them off. Ivan Melendez is probably the headliner,
Yep.
a guy that we suspected would sort of make a lot of sense for this opportunity. AJ Vukovich is also there, outfielder, third baseman from AA. Blake Walston is in there, AAA lefty, first-round pick back in 2019 for the D-backs. Christian Montes de Oca, who's a reliever. Right-handed reliever, Austin Pope as well, another right-handed reliever, Jake Rice, a lefty reliever, Caleb Roberts, a catcher who's put up some pretty good numbers this year in AA, and then Carlos Meza, hoping I'm saying that right. He is a left-handed reliever down in the D-backs farm system. So, yeah, the headliner names here are the first 3 that I mentioned: Ivan Melendez, AJ Vukovich, and Blake Walston. These are guys you've probably seen on top prospect lists. They show up somewhere in the top 10, top 15, typically, depending on which list you're looking at. Ivan Melendez was an interesting question for me because he has been on the injured list for the last couple weeks, and he was activated today. So, still am not sure what that injury was for Ivan Melendez, but it appears he is healthy and he is ready to go for the Fall League. We've talked about Melendez on the show a decent amount, right? I think people have probably heard the name at this point.
For sure.
Big power numbers this year: 272, 345, 578. That was a slash line.
From the University of Texas at Austin, by the way.
There you go. That was 426 plate appearances split between Hillsborough and Amarillo this year. He had 30 home runs, 76 RBI, 22 doubles, 2 triples. The big thing for Melendez, as we've talked about before, is the swing and miss, is trying to eliminate strikeouts. And the numbers are frankly a little alarming. 33.6% in high A, 35.3 in double A. Honestly, it's incredible that he's put up the numbers that he has with those strikeout rates. League average is generally around 21, 22, low 20s. So if you're in the mid 30s, that's about as high of a number as we ever see for anyone. So yeah, I mean, it's a credit to Melendez that he's put up the crazy numbers that he has in spite of how much swing and miss has been there. But I mean, that's the thing to watch in the Fall League for me is, how much is Ivan Melendez swinging and missing? How are the swing decisions? Is he swinging and missing only at pitches outside the zone, or is there also some in zone swing and miss, which I suspect there probably is for him. Those are going to be the big things to watch. But the raw power is off the charts. I wrote in my story about how, I mean, if anyone is like built for the home run derby, the Fall League has a home run derby. Like Ivan Melendez has to be in the Fall League home run derby. It would not feel right if he wasn't. So
you don't got to worry about swings and misses. At least you shouldn't.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully in the home run
Unless
derby.
You're Pete Alonso, right? Wasn't he the one that was getting screwed over by his pitcher at?
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
It was one of the most absurd things, getting sliders in the home run derby. It was absurd. And I mean, yeah, you mentioned it, like kind of seeing Ivan Melendez, how he deals, because one of the things that we talked about yesterday, at least as far as like position players, offensive players are concerned, is that like part of the reason you send guys to the Fall League is to kind of to get a better look at them, to challenge them a little bit. And I feel like, especially with a guy like Ivan Melendez, you need to challenge him, because those strikeout numbers, it's hard to believe that the success, the numbers that he's putting up outside of that are really that sustainable, right?
Right.
But I mean, so can you like kind of like we were talking about yesterday, like what really in general kind of is the mindset of an organization when they're choosing both position players and pitchers? Because like we kind of talked about, it's a little different for the Fall League.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and there's not like a super clear answer.
Yeah,
but
something you said you trying to figure out. Over years, right?
Yeah. Over time, you kind of can get a feel for it. Melendez seemed like a clear option. Number one, because he finished the year in AA, which it seems like a lot of guys sent to the Fall League. AA is sort of like the mean, like that's where I would say most guys probably come from. There are some guys from AAA, there are some guys from high A, but AA is kind of right in the middle. That's sort of the sweet spot for these guys. So Melendez made a lot of sense from that standpoint. Also, just guys like you just said, guys that you want to challenge, that you just want to see, get a little bit more of a look at them.
Mm-hmm.
A big thing is also if players were injured, if they missed some at bats during the season, then the Fall League is a good opportunity to catch up on that. And that's especially true for pitchers. If pitchers miss a few months or whatever, you want to still be logging as many innings as you can. So yeah, those are kind of some of the main things that you look at. On the pitching side, another factor to think of is if a pitcher has already thrown a good number of innings, a lot of times you won't see those guys just because they've already hit their innings limit.
One of the guys I was curious about was a guy like Ivan Melendez. And
yeah, right.
Like you said, he probably already pitched as much as the organization wants him to pitch this year.
There's sort of a reasonable limit there. And, every team with every player specific situation kind of knows where that sweet spot is. I think AJ Vukovich is also an interesting selection for the Diamondbacks. He became more interesting as a prospect this year because he played center field a considerable amount. Vukovich has primarily been a third baseman since the D-backs drafted him a few years ago, and it just hasn't really, there's some raw power there, but his approach hasn't generally been great. His walk rates have generally been really low. I think a lot of people have had some doubts about whether the bat would actually play as like an everyday third baseman or an everyday corner outfielder. But in center field, the bar to clear is quite a bit lower, right? If you can play a decent center field, you don't have to have an 850 OPS or whatever to be a valuable player. So Eric Longenhagen from Fangraphs in his midseason prospect report for the D-backs, he was actually pretty impressed with how Vukovich has looked out there in center field. So I think he's kind of the other big, kind of intriguing name here. Blake Walston, a first round pick, is interesting as well. But he's kind of struggled this year in AAA in some ways. The ERA is good, but he has basically as many walks as strikeouts, which is never a place you want to be as a pitcher. Yeah. Even if some of the surface numbers look good at the end of the day.
Yeah. Just because I know Cogs had mentioned it. Yeah. The Sod Poodle's currently up 6-3 in the 9th, so they are looking pretty good in the Texas League playoffs.
Yeah.
But as far as the fall league is concerned, games start October 2nd, and they're basically every day except for Sunday. Kind of spread throughout the spring training things here. Although you mentioned the Rafters play like only home games for the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, for the first 2 weeks. It's really weird. The schedule is not like even and balanced at all. It's just the Rafters, which is the team that the Diamondbacks players are playing for. You'll find them at Salt River Fields for every single game in the first couple weeks. And then toward the end of the fall league season, it flips the other way where they're like never at Salt River Fields for a span of 2 weeks or so. So anyone who's been to these facilities knows that Salt River Fields is kind of the gold standard. So if you're able to get to one of those games in those first 2 weeks, I would highly recommend.
Yeah, the fall league is a lot of fun, and especially if you're just like a baseball fan, like getting to see all these different prospects. If you're not fully familiar with the fall league, there's 6 different teams, right? That are each comprised of 5 different MLB teams,
right?
And each team sends a set of their prospects there, and then they play throughout basically the month of October, I guess, right? I love it. I love going. It's like no one goes to the games. They're like $10 to go to. I love them. They're super fun. You guys did a meetup at Fall League All-Star game?
Yeah, it was the home run derby,
yeah.
Actually. Yeah, Davison De Los Santos was in the home run derby last year in the Fall League, which was fun to watch. There's also the Fall Stars game, which is basically an all-star game, which is a lot of fun. The championship game, there's usually a good showing for that. MLB Network, broadcast some of those marquee events. It really is. I mean, last year I wrote that it was like the best kept secret in baseball. And it really shouldn't be a secret because it really is kind of baseball paradise. Yeah. I mean, if you're someone who's interested in prospects and interested on, who the stars of tomorrow are going to be in our game, I think if I'm remembering correctly, if you look at the All-Star starting lineup, the starting lineups for the NL and AL All-Stars last year, I think 12 of the 18 had played in the Fall League.
I mean, J-Rod was a Fall League guy and obviously ended up winning Rookie of the Year. So there's hella prospects there.
Yeah.
It is a lot of fun.
But the Diamondbacks might be in the playoffs, Sean. And if that's the case, then I don't know how much people are going to be watching those Fall League games.
That is very true. Hopefully they take a little bit of a backseat, but we'll see.
Forgive my ignorance, but so the D-backs send how many players?
8, you said it was?
Yeah, the D-backs send 8 players, and each Fall League team has 5 major league organizations that send players. So you wind up with like 40 players basically for each team. which is on the higher end. But you know, a lot of these pitchers like aren't super stretched out, or teams don't want them going like 6 innings or whatever. So it takes a pretty decent sized roster in order to make it work. And that's another factor is, you know, when you're deciding who you're going to send, you have to coordinate with the other teams. You can't just send all of the positions that you want to send. You have to, you know, kind of negotiate with other teams on what that's going to look like.
It's
so
chaos.
It is.
I kind of love it.
It is awesome. And also, you get to see sometimes, at least last year you did get to see some of like rule changes, right? Last year they were using the ABS challenge system, which was really cool to see.
I suspect they'll do that again. I have not confirmed
that,
but I would be kind of surprised if they didn't do that again.
I really enjoy the challenge system.
If you haven't seen the challenge system and they do it, we'll try to figure out if they do. It's honestly worth going just to see what the challenge system
like if you ever
like.
watched tennis where like there's a challenge and then they all go up to the video screen and there's like an animation of the ball going. It's basically just like that, where they'll show they'll show where the pitch went and they'll change the call based on what happened.
And it's cool because, you know, it's all contingent on either it's either the pitcher and catcher who can challenge batter, or the batter.
Which
so it all happens on the field. There's no like video. There's no video review component. It's kind of a challenge thing. Like you're a hitter and you're being like, hey, I think I know the strike zone better than the umpire does right now. And it's fun. I mean, dugouts get into it, and the crowd, the crowd, there's not usually much of a crowd at fall league games, which is arguably one of its better characteristics.
I love that
for people who just love like a chill environment where you can really go in and sit wherever. It's really incredible experience. And, when the time comes, I'm sure we're going to be talking fall league on here a whole lot, but just know going in, you should absolutely plan on going to some games if you can.